applause.
Thank you. Well, thank you for John for arranging this evening for us. I appreciate that. And thank you for taking some time out of your busy week. I appreciate it. It's one of my favourite legal topics. So hopefully I'll be able to give you some good value today. I'm Jamie from Clearman Lawyers, commercial law firm in Wollongabba. We're about 2 years old now, as John said, but I've been a lawyer for about a decade and change. So, as John said as well, this presentation is not intended to be about legal advice. It's just some general advice about how wills work and doesn't create a client-lawyer relationship. It's just general information and shouldn't be relied on as a substitute for legal advice. So I can stand here for hours talking to you about what I think and what I think is important, or I could do a more important thing, which is engage with you about ideas that you're interested in and understand what's important to you. That way we have an opportunity to connect a little bit. We can start to help you build what you want and need. So if we can work together a bit this evening, that'd be nice. So a little summary first. We can talk about what wills are. Then I'll give you 3 or 4 little stories I think are important that some of us might have heard before. Then we can address some technical parts about wills and families. I think that's important. We can talk about normal costs for different kinds of wills and enduring powers of attorney. And then John has my contact details, so I'm happy to have a chat with you and email you my recently refreshed Helpful Wills Guide. And then at the end you can ask me any questions you might have and I'll do my best to answer them for you. So. Right. Last time we weren't on camera, so we'll just do things a little bit differently. So wills can be a slightly leaden topic for some people. So let's get that out of the way now. This story is from Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, a somewhat controversial guru, but it's a good story. So once upon a time there dwelt in an old king in a palace. In the centre of a golden table in the main hall there shone a large and resplendent jewel. And each day in the king's life the stone sparkled more beautifully. But one day a thief stole the jewel and ran away from the palace and hid in the forest. As this thief stared with deep joy into that stone, to his amazement an image of the king appeared in it. "I have come to thank you," said the king. "You have released me from my attachment to earth. I thought I was free when I acquired this jewel, but then I learned that I would be released only when I passed it on with a pure heart to another person. So each day of my life I polished that stone until finally this day arrived, when the jewel became so beautiful that you stole it, and I have passed it on and am released." So if you'd quickly have a chat with your partner, what does that story mean to you? Give yourself 20 seconds to have a quick chat.
Passing on your possessions. Not be too attached to him.
Yes, attachment.
Yeah, agree.
You can't bring it with you.
Can't take it with you. Can't take it with you.
Yeah, I agree. So it seems to me that everyone's saying you can't take it with you, don't get too attached to what we've got here and now. It's easy to say, but a little bit hard to do day to day, right? All right, so let's build a little bit of context together. Firstly, let's talk about what a will is and what an enduring power of attorney is. So again, have a quick chat with your partner. What's a will? What's an enduring power of attorney? What's the difference? And if you're at home, you can ask yourself the same question.
And if you lose your marbles, you appoint an attorney to make your
You can be my enduring attorney.
You have to be certified.
Well, I'll make sure that everything gets
For legal reasons or
properly.
but once you're stripped of your legal powers as an individual, that's when the power of attorney you appoint.
Okay, if I could interrupt you, knock me out. What's a will? Give me your best shot.
It tells the executor of the will what to do with your goods and chattels when you kick the bucket.
Yeah, okay, so when you're gone, it's anybody else?
It's your last testament.
Uh-huh. That sounds very formal. What does it really do?
It's your wishes
Your wishes.
Uh-huh.
being passed
So,
Distribution of your property.
Yeah.
right.
Distribution.
Has anyone got a broader idea? Who is it for?
It's your wishes.
But who's it for?
Well,
The people that we
with
like,
people we like, or
we,
just,
yeah.
and we can say we didn't like this
Relative.
person, so we're not giving them anything.
Sure. We might do that. Yeah, sure. All right. So it's your wishes once you pass away. What, for property, money?
Cat.
I think that's fair enough. All right. So I think it's for family to take care of loved ones, to know we've got everything in order in our lives, justice, to repay someone for being a carer, business succession and how the entities are to be controlled. There's a whole lot of different purposes for a will. So I'm sure you've heard that people buy holes, not drills. Nobody wants a drill. At a high level, people want the holes that drills make. The hole is the outcome, it's the useful part. It enables you to do something else, to hang a picture or a door or connect different items together. So if a will is a drill, what's the hole?
Oh.
What do you want a will to do? What are the benefits you get if you've got a will?
Well, you know where,
Your wishes.
well, you know where all the things are going when you want.
Yeah, why would you want that? Why would you care about that?
You don't want the government involved.
Sure?
But that's,
Sure.
You don't want to lose
Public
it.
public trust.
Peace of mind?
Peace of mind, I think that's one, yeah. I'm not saying there's any right answers here,
No.
just asking you what you think.
Justice, fairness.
Yep. Don, anything?
Oh, Chris said you don't want your family fighting.
Yep.
Yep. But that's, you can write the will, whatever will you like. Like the public trustee will say, like because the family, you know, what do you call that, family benefits, I can't remember the name. But anyhow, so they can just go and change it. Doesn't matter what will you write.
Oh,
Yeah.
maybe.
People hate.
All right, so my ideas, there's satisfaction, there's control, there's like a resume, there's a summary, a review, contentment. We all want love, strong connection with good people, friends, family, community and our business networks. Let's get a bit broader then. We want a sense of being involved, being part of things, being special, maybe being challenged, having a feeling that we're steering our own ship. We want to play our part and have a chance and be bold, enough to make something happen, I think, to build something good. We want to have enough and to be safe, and we don't want the assets that we built up over a lifetime to go to waste. We want them to go to people that we care about and love. And we definitely want to be actively involved in our life's direction, I think, and write our own story. And we don't want to die with our music still in us. And this might be a bit of a surprise. I think a will partly functions as an audit tool. So it's not just a boring cost for only when we've passed away. Wills are a measuring tool. They're an organisation tool and an accounting, an audit. They're like an exam, if you like. A record of how we did, where we went, how we were going, how effectively we negotiated reality, including friends, family, other people and organisations in our lives. And there's a good saying, where there's a will, there's a family. So a will isn't just for you, it's for other people as well. So quickly talk to your partner. Who are wills for in your life?
Things we also. Family.
Friends and family. Cat.
Yeah, me too. The cat.
Yeah, give it to the dog pound.
Yep. So we get a bit of charity. What else?
Yeah.
I heard friends and family. Could be employees. It could be charities. Anything else?
Government.
Don't take it anyhow.
Taking enough charity through your life.
What did Kerry Packer say? That if anyone that thought they should give more than they needed to needed their head read. That was a good old quote. Okay, so they're critically a guide for the people that are left behind, for better or worse. So in business, we don't just spend all of our time on the product or the service. We make sure that we design a good experience for the end user, the people, the customers, the clients, the stakeholders. So what could be better than designing the end of our story, the end of the file arc to be great? A happy family and friends and a 5-star Google review will. That's sort of what we're all aiming for, right? So a good will is an opportunity for us to see if we're on track or off track. It might show whether we have some gaps in our strategy. It's a gift to family and friends and also ourselves, I think. I think that's important. It's our opportunity to write our current vision of our last chapter from where we are right now. Could be simple, could be aspirational, could be a big grand series of interlocking documents that provide a blueprint for the start of the sequel, whatever that might be. Right, so I've got 4 little stories for you. So the first one is a very modest post office will story. So Karen and Tina's dad died about 20 years ago. He made a post office will and tried to give his house to his family, to the wife and then to his daughters. Unfortunately, it was genuinely a crappy will. Karen and Tina's mum died about 10 years ago. And so Tina was an adult, she was the client. And she'd been happily living in the house until her sister Karen said that's enough. She wanted her half of the house. But the only real asset of the estate was that house, and neither of the girls had much money at all. So normally you just transfer the house from the dad's estate to the mum's estate, then you just transfer it from the mum to the daughters as the personal representatives, and then you deal with it from there. But Dad's will was such a mess that he hadn't clearly nominated an executor, and he hadn't clearly differentiated between the mum and the children and who should get what. So the titles office wouldn't allow that transfer from the mum who'd passed away to the girls, well, to her estate. So the girls couldn't sell that property because they weren't on the title. So the reason why Tina was trying to come to the party and get this done was because Karen was going to sue her if she didn't. So my old firm agreed to do the work on the basis that we got paid from the proceeds of the sale and took a mortgage over the property to make sure that we got paid. Barristers were briefed, Supreme Court application was made, and eventually Tina was able to buy Karen's half interest from her. Everybody was more or less happy. So Dad's effort to save a few bucks up front was very expensive in the long run. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I spent a good bit of my time over the last 5 years in my old firm working on a $40 million apartment development. So that's not the client's main business. So one day, a few years ago now, the client sent me an email. I want a simple will like the one that I've attached. And it was a 1-page post office will. I sent him back an email asking if his accountant would provide me a list of all the companies and trusts and other assets that he controlled. The next day he sent me back a list of 13 different structures. But he had completely forgotten to add into the list the entity that owned the $40 million apartment complex. So that's a pretty good oversight if you ask me. So I politely let him know that a post office will wasn't the job, wasn't the thing for his situation, and I'd be negligent if I tried to provide one. So story 3. Terry was Neville's stepson and both were alcoholics. So Terry's mum had been separated from Neville for about 20 years. When Terry's mum passed away, her will tried to give her son Terry about $495,000 from an AMP insurance policy. Unfortunately for Terry, Neville, his stepdad, was the beneficiary noted in that insurance policy. So boys will be boys, so Terry got Neville drunk and got him to sign a cheque for about $500,000 to Terry. So despite his mum's later intentions, it wasn't Terry's money, and luckily, for Neville anyway, that cheque was drawn on the wrong account. So although Terry died about 2 weeks later, he had plenty of money, and that wasn't connected to the $500,000. But just you've got to be very careful with insurance money, how you give it, and a will is not the right place for that, maybe. So a little trick question: if you talk to your partner, what assets normally aren't automatically controlled by our wills? Suddenly a quiet room.
Which house?
We'll have to look
It's
at
not controlled by the will. There's
A house?
the house.
Contents of the house?
I heard some good things. Maybe superannuation.
Insurance.
Insurance. Yep.
I don't fully understand the question.
Okay. So if you have a will,
Yeah.
what parts of your financial life can you control from that will?
Okay. The house and
Maybe.
bank account.
Yep.
All that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yep. Anything else?
Insurance.
So then that comes down to what can't you generally control in your will?
What about trusts?
Trust, that's a, yep. Sounds good, yep. Trust, you've got super's trust, insurance, that's a trust. What about a company? So there are a few things that maybe can't easily be controlled in your wills. All right, so superannuation, insurance, company assets and trust assets, not automatically part of your estate. They're not in your own name. Property held as joint tenants, if I passed away, it automatically goes to the other joint tenants. Doesn't go anywhere near my will. Doesn't form part of my estate.
Not your half.
What's that?
So your half.
Depends how depends how it's held. If it's held as tenants in common, then your half will go, because it's in your name, goes according to your will.
Yeah.
But if you're joint tenants, it means you both own all of the house. It's a strange relationship, but if one passes away, automatically the value of that property goes to the other person, for joint tenants. Okay, last story is about doctors. So a client has 2 boys from a previous marriage. They're nearly adults, and an ex-wife who spent her property settlement. He and his current partner have 2 little girls together now and make about $800,000 combined. The relationships with his ex and the boys aren't so great. So our client's business trust earns good money. They have a number of properties, a self-managed super fund and insurance policies, but they also have some liabilities too. So if our client passes away, he wants to give something to the 2 boys who are in their mid-teens, but the bulk of the funds to his new partner and their 2 little girls. So the clients are very busy with work, but they want to set things up to avoid estate litigation down the track. Classic litigation, of course, is between stepchildren or children from a first marriage who want to stop their parents' current partner or children from obtaining all the money. So the main issue is setting up our client's affairs so significant funds don't pass to his or her estate where it's up for grabs in litigation. So if his partner passes away first, she doesn't have much in her own personal name, that's fine. If he passes away first, or they pass away at the same time, there are some risks that if funds aren't moved away from their names now, whether into super or insurance, then the children from the previous marriage might make a claim and the ex could squander the money again. So we're reviewing his insurance, self-managed super fund deed, the corporate trustee, company constitution and his will to work out any weak links and make recommendations to simplify and strengthen the documents. So there's some complexity there, and I think that will work. Will probably end up being about $2,500 to $5,000. But now we're talking about costs. We might as well just go through what my normal costs are. For a single will, $360 plus GST. That's for a simple single will. Single enduring power of attorney, $180 plus GST. 2 standard wills, like for a couple, $540 plus GST. So there's a good deal there. 2 enduring powers of attorney, $270 plus GST. And testamentary trust wills, more like $1,500 to $2,500, maybe, depending on what's needed there. All right, so we've talked a little bit about what wills are and how they can be useful. We've lost John, I think. Please talk briefly with your neighbour and see if you have any questions for me. So have a chat with your neighbour first and then we'll open it up.
What's enduring power of attorney? What's that mean?
Like when you go gaga or whatever.
They've got control.
Yeah, you have to trust.
Is that like the executive? What's the executive?
You're a nominated beneficiary with the
Person you actually actually makes the will work.
As you do
Oh,
with
makes them
superannuation.
go to the right people.
Yeah.
We have to do that with
So
current
you have to obviously you have to nominate the
nominated a beneficiary.
Yeah.
before you go gaga.
Think about it in the public trustee.
How do they determine if you're gaga?
That's what I'm saying.
What if you want to change it and you are gaga? Who's going to say
Your own salary?
I don't know. maybe.
Like venue.
Okay, it sounds like we've got some interesting questions. Who wants to have a crack?
Oh, right. Yeah, because I thought there was two, the insurance.
I think we're going with the microphone, John?
Oh, we're just picking up. As long as people speak up, we'll be fine.
Sure.
I've got a question. What is an enduring power of attorney?
Yep.
I don't understand what that is.
Okay.
I've got a little bit of an idea, but...
Yep. Anybody?
What it is.
Yeah, it's where you got someone else who can control your affairs.
Once you've...
Like if you're dementia or something, you know, someone becomes...
So an enduring power of attorney is when you're alive. If you're alive, and speaking broadly, if you lose capacity, you get a bump on the head or whatever it might be, you're sick, who do you want to make important decisions for you about your personal care or maybe financial decisions at that point? So you can choose to appoint somebody, family, friend, somebody trusted, who can you can trust to make good decisions when you don't have capacity to make those decisions.
Right.
So, but how do you know when you've gone to that stage? Who makes that decision?
Well, so for personal and health matters, the enduring power of attorney kicks in when you lose capacity. And there can be a million arguments about that. But I often, when I talk to clients, I often have a little clause in there that says when a doctor in the jurisdiction that I reside determines that I don't have the capacity to make X, Y, Z kind of decision. Yeah, so yeah, it's usually a doctor who gives the opinion about that. Yeah.
And that's recognised legally? Like, the doctor says, okay. Yeah.
Well, it's not the doctor's decision to make. The doctor's decision is they provide their opinion.
Yeah.
And then, if necessary, a court would determine whether that was... That's right, yeah.
Okay.
But if nobody asks the question, then that's the way it'll go.
Yeah, right.
Yep. It's only if somebody's arguing, one part of the family saying, no, mum has capacity.
Yeah.
Another part of the family, I'm thinking of a case from years ago. There was a family where the parents were worth dozens of millions of dollars, and the kids were arguing bitterly about whether she had capacity or not, because some of them wanted control over that money and some of them didn't have control. So yeah, that can be very complicated for sure. Yeah. But generally it's not. Generally it's pretty
Then
straightforward.
if it goes to court, you can request that. The other one side can request the doctor to give you an opinion.
That's not really in the frame of our conversation today, but yeah, that's a fair concept. Yeah. You'd go to an ACAT assessment, like it's like QCAT, but you know the aged care portion, and they've got people who are they're specialists at that work. Yeah, for sure.
So if you don't have a POA and something happens to you, you lose capacity, is there an automatic person like your will, like your spouse or your child?
No. And for a simple, so your question is, if you don't have an enduring power of attorney and you lose capacity, what happens?
Right.
Yeah. So generally, if it's just a quiet, simple, happy family situation, the people who would ordinarily take care of you will take care of you, and that will be fine. But complexity somehow gets bred in these kinds of circumstances where if somebody argues with that, then you have to go to have a formal assessment, and then somebody have to get appointed. So an enduring power of attorney is a pretty cost-effective way of cutting through that loop and making sure that you know who the people are who are going to make those decisions. It's taking it from being a public concept. It privatizes that idea, so that you're in control of those things. So if that's important, then...
Say, for example, I'm in a coma and I can't, I'm still alive, but my husband can't go to a bank and, access my account or do anything,
It's a tough situation.
In my absence, right?
I've got a client at the moment whose her brother had an aneurysm about 12 to 15 years ago, and he hasn't been able to make any short-term memories since. So he can't look after himself, he's in full-time care. So she has to basically make all those decisions for him. And luckily, the whole family made enduring powers of attorney about 20 odd years ago. For the parents at that time though, So it was just lucky that the kids made them as well. So things just happen, you know, and it gets complicated. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, like even now you can access your spouse, the bank wouldn't even talk to you, you know.
Well, it sort of depends, but it often gets complicated when something goes wrong in a family. And look, maybe I only see this side of things, right? My job, I'm a lawyer, I see these kinds of disputes, right? But I see these situations where sort of unexpectedly, one of the 2 or 3 kids is really difficult about these things, and they don't want these medical decisions to be made, and the other 2 maybe do. Then you've got a dispute within the family about what's going to happen to mum, maybe, right? Whether the house is going to be sold. Mum said she never wanted to go into care, or, you know what I mean? There can be all kinds of disputes like that. So for me, it makes sense if somebody has already appointed someone that they want to make the decisions for them. That person gets listened to, and it kind of, there's an opportunity to kind of settle down some of the politics that happen in families.
I recently had some experience with my mother's health, and her doctor was telling me that when anyone's admitted to a hospital, especially if you're unconscious and you remain unconscious while in hospital, the hospital actually has legal guardianship over you, and all your health decisions and your family's totally cut out, including spouses.
That seems odd to me.
Well, the hospital has legal guardianship of the individual, and they make all the health decisions unless you've got that health directive. That's why the health directive is so important, where you've gone through, you know, all those questions about resuscitation and nutrition and all those questions. So if there's not one of those in place, and that person can't make those decisions, especially if they're unconscious in a coma, then the family is actually cut totally out, including the spouse.
That's not my understanding of things, and I'd be super surprised if someone put that in writing to you. Yeah. Obviously, I don't know the full situation there. I can't give you any specific advice, but that seems completely contrary to what I've learned over the last sort of long time. So, yeah.
So they say unless you have a POA, they will make the decision on your mother's behalf.
Well, that's what...
I would have thought that'd be a really quick way to get into some sort of medical negligence kind of claim, like, you know, like that, not to involve the family, not to involve the people who are closest to that person, seems very odd to me. And I would have thought that the family would then consider, you know, maybe going through that sort of ACAT process to make an application or a claim that wasn't the case. Like, you could make an emergency, you know, somebody in that kind of situation, I would have thought, would make an emergency claim rather than just listening. I've never had legal advice from a hospital, is what I'm trying to say. So, yeah, that seems funny to me. And whether that was a miscommunication or however, I don't know what happened, but it sounds a bit odd to me. Yeah, I wouldn't, that's contrary to how I think about those things. Is that it? Anybody else?
Any time limit when a will should be revised? I mean, if nothing's changed for 30 years.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, the sales argument is any time that you have a significant change in your family or relationships or business or property or children, you know, that's the kind of time. But if it's pretty much what you... Yeah, I mean, why would you spend the money unless... I had a lovely lady come to me once, and she wanted to change her will because she'd changed her address. And I said to her, like, she was pretty insistent. And I said to her, look, you know, I'd love to help you with an enduring power of attorney if you really want me to do something, but let's not, I don't want to charge you to change it. You don't need to change that, like, there's no point, you know. She still wanted the same thing, you know. God bless her. So I think we did the enduring power of attorney, but I didn't change her will, so hopefully she wasn't disappointed. She was very stressed about the whole thing. Anyhow, moving can be hard, you know, sometimes, I guess. Any other questions at all?
So when you say she did that enduring power of attorney, you can do that ahead of time, so before you come unwell or something?
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Totally, yeah. You want to do it. I mean, you're talking to a lawyer who sells enduring powers of attorney, so of course I'm going to say this, but you want to do that. You can't do one when you don't have capacity.
No,
it's too late.
No. Usually the family or whoever do it. But if you're
No, it needs to be you doing one for you. If you don't have capacity, that's it. That's too late.
I'm taking it as something else. And when you say the executor...
Are you talking about an advanced health directive maybe? That's a different thing.
No.
Like most people know about enduring powers of attorney, well, most lawyers I guess. That's a document where you say, I want, for my personal and health matters, I want these people to make decisions if I can't. And for my financial affairs, I'm happy to have these people make decisions. And you can kind of elect whether you have that power start immediately once you sign the document, or later if you lose capacity, someone can make financial... They could sell your house if you needed to go into care, you know, that kind of thing. But you can only make an enduring power of attorney when you have capacity.
Yeah.
Once you've lost capacity, it's too late.
So put it in your will, more or less.
No, because your will's when you're dead.
Yeah.
So you do it at the same time maybe as you do your will. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So the idea is, let's say you're just a little bit concerned, you don't want to lose your marbles down the track, or you worry if you do lose your marbles down the track, you want to make sure you've got some people that you know and trust that can make decisions for you. So it's $180 to have that sort of peace of mind.
I could make you my enduring power of attorney?
Yes, you could.
Someone that's completely independent.
That's
of the
true,
family,
yeah.
but has
Sure.
legal,
Yeah, you could, and I have...
like obviously someone that's responsible and legally sound and...
But someone who kind of, you want to make sure that that person knows what you want.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Sit down and explain with them
I
in
think
detail.
so, yeah.
And then they could handle it.
They could,
It's like an independent...
yeah. And that's the same in your will. You can have it like a professional executor, and some people do that, you know.
Yeah.
Or they say to me, Jamie, I want my executor to talk to you about my legal position, you know, my affairs, you know, once I've passed away. Sure. All that sort of stuff happens, absolutely. But you'd want to handle that, you know, with care.
I'd want to make sure that we were both clear on everything.
On the same page.
Yeah.
And you'd have to understand that, like, I think most lawyers charge for that service. You know, so they'd be looking after you, but they'd be charging you for it, you know.
That's okay. That'd be irrelevant.
But
It can get really relevant, you know,
Very
like,
expensive.
yeah.
The
Well,
lawyers' rates.
it can be, but that could be good value as well,
Yeah.
because it could stop somebody else in the
Yeah.
family, unfortunately, from... I'm involved in litigation now with a family who... There's some definite fraud from the executor, there's no doubt about that. They didn't disclose a higher valuation for a property, so they tried to buy us out at a low valuation. But there's also, because we know there's been this fraud, now we're asking these questions about, well, what happened before she passed away when the attorney was managing the affairs of, you know, the finances? Like, you've got to ask yourself, this is, again, it could be just because of my job that I only see this sort of, you know, skewed view of the world, but I see it surprisingly often.
There's another thing is, if you nominate somebody's power of attorney, that person would then also want to be the power of attorney.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good
Yeah.
point. Yeah. And I've definitely been in a situation where I did a will for somebody, and then he passed away. He knew he wasn't well. He passed away a few weeks later, maybe a couple of months later, Bernie. But his wife had been in a coma for 6 years at that point. She was 35 kilograms or something, completely demented, had no... but Bernie was her first attorney in her enduring power of attorney. Once he went, suddenly the other attorneys came into play. They didn't want to be a part of it. But you can't simply get out from being someone's attorney when the person doesn't have capacity, when the principal doesn't have capacity. So again, we had to kind of make this court application to get the niece and nephew in as the attorneys to look after their aren't, because the attorneys didn't want to be part of it. So
Yeah, so,
that was complicated.
yeah, so somebody nominates you as an attorney, so, and you don't really want to, so what do you do?
It would depend. If the person still had capacity, it's pretty easy. You just say, I don't want to be your attorney, you revoke it, bang, easy. But if the person has lost capacity and then someone reaches out to you and says, hey, by the way, you're the attorney, then you have to make that same application. Yeah.
Yeah, so,
But you could say that you never knew that you were the attorney in the first place, whereas in the case that I was talking to you about, there's a clear letter saying, here's the enduring power of attorney. Like, they knew. You know, that's the difference maybe there.
yeah, what I'm saying is, how would you know that you have been nominated?
Yeah, what he's saying,
It could have been thousands of people nominated you never know. That's true.
can someone nominate
Yeah.
you as power of attorney without?
100%, yeah, for sure. Now, the enduring power of attorney, the principal, who's the person giving that power, decision-making power to somebody, that person has to sign in front of a lawyer, JP, Comdec, whatever it might be. But the document is valid even though the attorneys haven't signed yet. So I guess, I haven't really thought about this before, but so in that previous example, all of the attorneys had signed. So they had elected to be the attorneys, right? But in your question, you're saying, well, if you hadn't signed on the back to be an attorney, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I'd have to look at the legislation to find out. Yeah.
Another thing,
I'd assume that you couldn't be put on the hook without, agreeing to.
yeah,
That's what was my question. Could someone put you down as power of attorney without you knowing?
Otherwise, you'd all pick the wealthiest person you could think of, and you know what I mean. Jot them. Yeah.
there's, what's this ACAT? Or
ACAT, yeah.
ACAT, so what
Yeah.
exactly is that?
Adult Civil and Administrative Tribunal.
And who runs that?
It's pretty closely linked to the people that run QCAT, the Queensland Civil and Administrative Tribunal. It's a whole bunch of different. It's like there used to be a whole load of separate, like the Building Tribunal, the Body Corporate Tribunal, all those things used to be separate. Now they're under this one sort of big umbrella in Queen Street.
Right, okay. So, and who sort of, like if you go on Gaga would contact them to sort of classify it?
It'd be family usually. Family or the friends in your life would contact them. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And the executor, they can charge money for executing the will, can't they?
They can reimburse themselves from the estate generally, yeah. But if they're a lawyer, they need to have had an agreement with the client before they can do that.
Like my mother had a will with the Public Trustee, and they took money out for their costs.
Yeah, sure,
And
sure.
And they changed the will.
That's a complicated situation though. Like that would depend very much on the particular circumstances of that will, those assets, that family. There are cases like that for sure, where wills get changed after the person's passed away, but it's pretty unusual.
That's one thing, family provisions.
Yeah, sure, yeah. So you've all come here today to talk about wills. No more questions?
Does the public trustee charge the fee for their service?
I've no idea.
I believe they don't charge to help you do a will, but if they're asked to execute it, then they do. That's what I believe.
That sounds probably about right to me, but
if you
yeah.
want them to execute it, they're going to charge you then.
yeah. So you don't get charged on the front end, but then you get charged a bit on the back end maybe. Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's true.
I think that sounds probably about right, but yeah, I wouldn't, I don't know.
You don't care about that.
Just a question from online is Justina. Says she's asking, and forgive her if she's come in too late, but what happens if you die without a will? Have you covered that?
We haven't. You pass away intestate, and basically what happens is that there's a formula, and your assets are distributed depending on what family members are left, and it goes from there. You can, there's just an intestacy formula. So that's how it goes.
What's the formula like?
The formula is, it's sort of a series of concentric rings, so it depends which family members are around. But let's say you've got a spouse and 2 children left, then generally a third goes to the spouse, and then the rest of it gets distributed between the children. And the more children there are, and the less the spouses, then you kind of distribute it like that. Yeah, it's. I don't have it memorised. But what's that?
The children are underage. Does it still go that sort of way?
That would get a little bit more complicated. The funds would probably be held on trust for them, and yeah, for sure, yeah. But I'm assuming that that their basic needs would be taken care of and what have you from there, yeah. And it'd most likely then, I'm assuming that the public trustee would step in that situation, yeah.
I think if the wife was elderly and the kids were adults, then the wife, the only thing they've got is the house.
Are we talking about a specific situation here or general?
No, just general. I sort of think if a third goes to the wife, well, she's going to get a third of the house and the other kid's going to get the rest of it, but she needs
100%.
for the rest of her life.
So that's
why.
I see it the same as you. Why would you leave? I don't know. I think we're in a world which is increasingly moving towards a privatised system. So if you want to, if you want, I don't know, I find dealing with some organisations complicated. If I deal with my internet service provider, it makes me pull my hair out. If I deal with some other large organisations, service organisations, it gives me great trouble. So if I'm in a situation where for pretty reasonable money that I can privatise those decisions, and obviously I'm hopelessly biased because I'm a lawyer that does this sort of work, that sort of makes sense to me, Like I've got my own will, I have my own enduring power of attorney, because for exactly those reasons, I don't want those decisions to be a government kind of decision, But if somebody doesn't have the inclination to do that, then they should at least check out what the situation is if you don't have,
Just an extension on the last question, and so she's asked about what happens if the family's overseas and they're part of a will or the intestate side of the coin.
Yeah, you go and talk to a lawyer, definitely. Yeah, for sure. That's things start to get complicated in those situations when people are overseas and working through that way. So, yeah, I don't want to brush that off, but that's getting kind of more complicated and thoughtful. So,
That can get more complicated if you own assets overseas.
Yeah, for sure.
Like property, you have property in other countries.
And then it depends whether you're party to that convention. If your company's in, if that country's in or not. Like Greece may be in, China may be more complicated. They may be not in that UNIDROIT convention. So that gets complicated fast. Yeah, for sure. I've had a few queries, especially about property held in China, and so I think the simple way to do that is to have somebody in China who's familiar with their system handle the will from that end, but make reference to the will that's in Australia, for example, and have a will done here that handles the property that's here, that also makes reference to the will in China, so that everybody understands there's another document, and two countries aren't both trying to get assets from different places. Yeah.
I've heard that if you have a company and you put your children in the beneficiary, are they going to be risky if I pass away? It's going to be a risk for our children if they become beneficiary of your company?
Companies don't have beneficiaries, so we need to a little bit find out what you mean there. Do you mean shareholders, or do you mean if someone has a trust?
Like if you have trust, you have, if you have company, you have trust.
Yep. No, separate, not related. If you have a trust, then it has a trustee, which is like the brains of the situation. The trust is just what I call a dumb bucket. It has the shares, it has the business, has whatever it might be. And then the trustee might be an individual or it might be a company, whatever it might be, that does the thinking for that thing. So then at the bottom you have the beneficiaries, which are people maybe who might be given money at any particular time. All right? So if somebody passes away, then it doesn't make any difference to the trust really. doesn't really have any effect.
Is-
Unless that person has a very important role in that trust. But there should be fallback provisions in the trust deed. Like if you read the trust deed, it should say that if one of the trustees die, then this happens, blah, 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 blah. So if there's a trust, if let's say mum has a trust and she has, you know, a business that makes $1 million a year in that trust, then, and mum wants, if some of the beneficiaries are her children, for example, then some other people as well, then if mum passes away and then a trustee ends up in the number one spot that isn't particularly friendly with those children, then sure, that could be a problem for the children. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
You can be a beneficiary of a will without knowing.
Sure you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happens with a will if they're net?
Like everything that you think of about trusts, you can apply to a will.
Now, if someone dies and their asset position is negative, do you end up with debt?
No.
So you can't
No.
inherit a net debt.
Unless you wanted to.
You can-
But let's say you had a business.
Yeah.
Let's say you had a business that was valued at $4 million that had $8 million debt. But you knew that $4 million company had a way to make $30 million. You'd take on that debt every day of the week, right? So in that situation, sure, you could inherit debt, you could disclaim it, or you could say, look, I know that there's a way that I could turn this around and go from there, you
I was
know?
thinking of a more simple situation where someone just dies and their debts are bigger than their assets.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah, and you're a beneficiary and suddenly you find someone dies and you end up with a debt.
No.
No, you can't inherit a net debt.
Well, you can, but you just disclaim it. You just say no. You can't force someone to take a debt like that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
But it can be a real mess. It can be a real mess.
Isn't the debt extinguished on their debt? Because you can't chase a dead person through courts.
You can chase their assets. But,
That's a fairly complicated question. It's probably outside the scope of what we're really talking about today. Yeah, I'd say, yeah. Yeah. It's a good question, though. We could have a beer and talk about it one day.
Maybe you should give away the bulk of your assets before you die, then you know where it's going.
But what if you live for another 40 years?
Well,
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like that's a...
yeah, but
If you know when you're going to go, then that's not a bad strategy, but, you know.
if you've got a fair bit of stuff, you don't need all of it. Maybe you should start distributing some of it before you park it.
I think, though, that
You know
people...
what I'm saying?
Yeah, but what about this, though? Do you think that people who are minded to accumulate a whole bunch of things, like the shiny stone with that king, do you think they're going to let things go at a certain point, or they're going to hold? I think that's a personality thing, like, you know. If I'm
I don't want to let go.
Become a grand nomad.
Culturally, like in
Oh,
Asia,
yeah.
they pass on to their children way before. And
Right.
they pass on to the children when the children
Right.
are at the age
Yep.
where they can manage.
Yeah.
And then the children in turn look at
And that makes a big
Yeah.
difference right at that point.
Yeah.
Whereas if you inherit something at 65,
Yeah,
you know, you have...
exactly.
Yeah, that's probably not a bad plan. That presumes, though, I think,
Yeah, if their children
that
are
you've
healthy.
got... Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they do the right thing.
Whereas it's shocking what kids do for 350 grand. It's just shocking. They'll just gut the whole rest of their family. They won't even think about it.
Yeah.
Like for less than that money.
Yeah.
That case that I was telling you about before, it's being argued for, I don't know, less than $200,000. Like they hate each other like poison now. Like it's not uncommon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a bit
A
disappointing.
lot of that money would get chewed up in fees. Like,
Yeah,
it's got to be a no-win situation unless you're a lawyer.
but so there's a cartoon I saw years ago, and it's two dogs sitting at the corner of a bar, and one dog says to the other, "It is not enough that dogs win. Cats must also lose." You know, there's that mentality that they don't care at a certain point. I've had people say to me, "I would rather give the money to you in legal fees than they get it."
Then they get it. Gee.
Yes.
I've seen that between
Just
siblings.
burn it, just make a big pile.
And a surprising number of people when someone passes away and the beneficiaries know they're going to get some money, they then go and spend that money before they get it. So they're desperate by that time. Yeah, and so if there's any delays or anything, then they just savage the people who are the executors and what have you. Yeah, it can be really uncomfortable, unhappy.
Brings out the worst in
It just brings out the worst in some people.
Gee.
They say money's an amplifier. So if you're okay and you're doing all right, and then more money will just, bring that out. But if you're someone who's a bit, troubled like that, then yeah, I think a bit of money can make that worse,
Money brings out the real you, doesn't it, Steve?
I think it brings out the best in some people, but it brings out the worst in some, for sure. Yeah. Funny old world.
It's interesting.
All right, well, I think we're just about there. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I don't know if I have any actually right now, but John knows my details anyway,
No, we'll look.
Take a photo.
I've known John.
I'll just jump back in. Thank you very much, Jamie. Just another round of applause for Jamie.
Thank you so much.
One that the people at home can hear. Yeah, so, and just for those at home,
Thank you.
and for everyone here as well, what is that phone number, Jamie?
It's 0422
Jamie, 0422
241
241
881.
881, and that's Clearman Lawyers, yeah.
That's it.
And you're at Wollongabba.
Exactly.
Halfway in town.
There you go. Thank you very much, Jamie. It's really great. It's as I've seen.
Thank you, John.
So I've known you for some years now, and it's been wonderful to see your business grow and all the rest of that, and
You're very
your
kind.
willingness to come out on a cold, frosty night.
Yeah.
We've got the Olympics coming to Brisbane as well, which is
Absolutely.
great. Is it? So we could be out celebrating, but no, we're here. So thank you very much, and I'm going to go sign off from this live stream. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the time. We've got tea, coffee. What's up?
881, the last three.
881. Yeah. 0422 241 881. Everyone, yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
That's a one with a.
Looks like
I'm not going to argue this. I've got some live stream to film.
Come on,
Thank you,
let's have an
everyone.
argument.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. No. And there's distinctly two different ones there. Like if they were both the same.